turning to an explosive new alleged confession in the Matt Gaetz sex crime investigation. What I'm about to report to you right now is a bombshell that would change everything if true. The Daily Beast reporting on an alleged confession letter they claim was written by a well-known Gaetz associate, Joel Greenberg, who allegedly wrote, Congressman Matt Gaetz paid for sex with multiple women as well as a girl who was 17 at the time. This is a potential breakthrough. If it sounds familiar, this is the indicted Gaetz ally at the center of this whole DOJ probe. Now, according to the Daily Beast, accusing Gaetz directly of a major sex crime felony in writing. That's the Daily Beast reporting. You can see immediately, and I haven't even gotten to all of it, why it sounds like such a bombshell. I also have to do what we always try to do around here, which is tell you what we know and what we don't. As of this hour, NBC News has not verified this account or been able to obtain or see this underlying letter. But the Daily Beast does say they have this explosive letter. They say they verified it, and it alleges that, quote, payments were made to several of the girls, including the individual who was not yet 18, a minor. Now, when it comes to what we're reading from, this written confession, it's not just some random person making an allegation against a politician. This is a Gaetz ally who spent time with him, as these photos attest, who's now under huge legal pressure criminally to not only give the feds factual information, but information with evidence that the feds can use in court. So with that in mind, note that Greenberg alleged he also says he saw the acts occur firsthand. And he goes on to directly implicate Gaetz, saying payments were made to these girls on behalf of the congressman, end quote. And Gaetz faces this criminal probe that's ongoing, including serious potential charges like sex trafficking and possible sex with a minor. For his part, he denies all allegations. He has not been charged with a crime. So let's take this in. If you've been following this story, it's been a doozy even before this allegedly written confession. Why would Greenberg put any of this in writing in the first place? Well, that's also very interesting. The Daily Beast reporting this was his last-ditch effort to save himself when he reached out to a very controversial Trump ally and fellow defendant pictured in this infamous video, longtime advisor to Donald Trump, Roger Stone, who faced his own legal trouble. He was arrested here, he was raided, he was prosecuted, he was convicted. The only way out of this mess was that he ultimately received a very controversial pardon from his longtime friend, Donald Trump. So the Daily Beast has obtained text messages they say are from Greenberg directly asking Stone to get for him what he got for himself, a pardon. Quote, if I get you $250,000 in Bitcoin, would that help? Or is this not a financial matter? One message asked. And on January 13th, Stone reportedly replying, quote, I hope you are prepared to wire me $250,000 because I'm feeling confident. A reference to his confidence that he could indeed get a presidential pardon for Greenberg, which did not occur. As a tax collector in Florida, he's indicted on charges that include sex trafficking, identity fraud, stalking, and misusing taxpayer money. Greenberg's lawyer has suggested there would be some sort of cooperation. The Daily Beast reports Greenberg asked Stone to get him a pardon from Trump there. All of this means that the confession that we just read from, allegedly, that confession letter was designed to help Stone make the case for the pardon. Now, there is more to the story, and as always, you need to get all of it. Gaetz' publicist telling NBC in response to all of this, Congressman Gaetz has never paid for sex, nor has he had sex with a 17-year-old as an adult. Adding, quote, the Daily Beast story contains a lot of confessions from Greenberg. It does not add anything of substance and certainly no evidence for the wild and false claims about Representative Gaetz. Now, the Daily Beast story appears significant because it includes this alleged confession and accusations of new possible pardon scandals coming out of Trump world. It's a big deal, and our guests are going to walk us through it. As to Gaetz' response, let's be clear. If Mr. Greenberg only has, say, words, accusations, and zero evidence, that may not go very far in court. The question facing Greenberg and the investigators, and of course Gaetz himself, is whether this very serious accusation can be proven. To get into all of it now, we're joined by the New York Times' Michelle Goldberg and attorney Nancy Erica Smith, who has worked on many harassment cases and knows her way around exactly these tricky issues. So thanks to both of you for joining us. We've been covering this story. This is clearly the biggest development in it. I took great pains, Nancy, to emphasize what we know, what we don't, and that NBC just hasn't been able to verify that letter. So walk us through legally what you see here.
Well, the Daily Beast did get a handwriting expert, and they compared the handwriting in the handwritten letter, and there were typed versions with various pieces of handwriting that they know were Greenberg's. So that's pretty significant. The Daily Beast also claims that they viewed 150 Venmo payments from Gates to Greenberg, and very oddly named what they were for. So we're looking at least the minimum for one count is 10 years in prison, not less than 10 years in prison for sex with a minor. Then we're looking at interstate travel for sex. Then we're looking at soliciting prostitution. Then we're looking at trafficking, a 17-year-old. And then possibly, I've always wondered whether this was pornography, because Greenberg said he saw the acts firsthand in his letter. And we know that Gates showed nude pictures around the floor of Congress. So was there an element of pornography going on here with underage girls? Really, my heart goes out to these high school aged girls who were preyed upon by these men more than twice their age. I was shocked when I read that Greenberg said he confronted the 17-year-old and she apologized for allegedly not telling them she was 17. That level of depravity is hard to get your head around, but it shows a treatment of women. I mean, that's an admission of a treatment of women like, it's your fault you're so young and I paid you for sex and trafficked you. There's a lot here.
Nancy, Nancy, speak more about that, because this obviously has all the makings of a political scandal and the pardon piece, which I want to get to with Michelle. But you've advocated and represented people in various ranges of these types of cases. And you're speaking to the fact that allegedly, and again, I'm being as precise as I can with this kind of story, but allegedly, this involves alleged victims. It involves real people. It's not just a story about whether Mr. Gates will stay in Congress or not. Speak more on the point you're raising there.
Yeah, it's really shocking to me how the young, very young women have been treated. The last time I was on, we were talking about a young girl who was terrified and who had maybe tape recorded Matt Gates's former girlfriend in order to protect herself and maybe have something to bring to the prosecutors. It's sort of reminiscent of Monica Lewinsky being abused by Ken Starr. The victims here are not discussed at all. A 17-year-old girl, apparently in a group sex act. That's how it reads from the confessional letter that allegedly was written by Greenberg. He says he saw the acts firsthand. So clearly there's not just some private sex act going on. We know that Gates loved to show nude photographs of young women he was telling people he was having sex with. It's so exploitative. It's so shocking that it hurts me. And I really feel for these young women who are caught in such a difficult legal position.
Appreciate you making that point, and that was another detail in the Daily Beast article, which, again, as you say, if true, allegedly sounds like very guilty, because it alleges that Mr. Greenberg got this information and then followed up on it with the understanding or belief that this was a minor. Michelle, yes. As if this all wasn't enough, honestly, we haven't even hit the pardon part yet, which is that apparently, according to this reporting and what they say are direct communications between these people, a sex crime pardon goes for about $250,000, as far as Roger Stone considered it. And he's not nobody. He's one of Donald Trump's closest, longest confidants, who himself ended up getting a pardon. So again, I mentioned that that's different than someone writing something randomly on the internet. These are people in a position to know. Now, I want to make sure before I go to Michelle that we are, as part of our reporting, obligated to read this statement. This is new from Mr. Stone. Quote, "I made no effort whatsoever to secure a pardon for Mr. Greenberg. I took not a dime from him or anyone else seeking a pardon. I have seen no substantiation or actual proof of any of the wild accusations he has made against Congressman Gates." Mr. Stone continues, quote, "Desperate men often tell lies in an effort to implicate others in their own crimes in an effort to lessen the penalties against themselves." End quote. Michelle, our standards department, which has rigorously gone over the story, requires that defense from Mr. Stone, and he's entitled to his denial. Your view on all of the above and what sounds like a potential pardon scandal?
Well, I don't know. I am not a lawyer. I have no idea if it's a crime to try to sell a pardon if you don't do it. But I do, because it does seem like there was a going rate, I hope that Joe Biden's Justice Department is looking into the way, to kind of the corrupt dealing in pardons, both with Roger Stone and maybe with other figures in the Trump administration, because there's been a lot of reporting about a lot of money passing around and, a lot of, kind of this was basically just a cash transaction for a lot of people. The other thing I would point out is that, again, I'm not a lawyer, but Greenberg is a person who was known to make false accusations against his political enemies. So it seems to me that if prosecutors are cutting a deal with him, they wouldn't just do so on his word, right? He's a person who appears to have committed many, many different crimes, who is an unreliable narrator, as Roger Stone said. But to me, that means that's all the more telling about why prosecutors are willing to cut a deal with him. It would suggest, at least to me, that it's likely that they have more than just his word. And, another detail of the Daily Beast story that I thought was so interesting is that it talks about Roger Stone sending messages on this app Signal that are meant to quickly disappear, but Greenberg's taking pictures of all of them. If that's his MO, I would, it's likely that wasn't just his MO with Stone, but his MO with Gates as well.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.